And welcome to this keynote on social pedagogy and gut feeling. First of all, we would like to introduce ourselves. This is my partner in crime and teammate, Lotte. And, well, yeah.
Lotte Junker Harbo, and together with Charlotte, I work at VIA University College, continuing education in the field of help, as we call it. I'm a trained social pedagogue and then a researcher, and with a main focus on social pedagogy and people sort of outside the more established arenas of our society. So yeah, but it's a key thing that I'm a trained social pedagogue and you are actually a social worker.
Yeah, and just as Lotte said, I also work here at VIA, and I would call myself a lecturer in social work, and yeah, Lotte and I do research together, and yeah, it's help, and it's also within social marginalized or excluded groups of people that are our main interest. It's both young and adults.
Yeah, and I think maybe to just add a few words on why we see ourselves as part of the same system. We have a reference to Niklas Luhmann's sociological work, where we, even though you're a social worker and I'm a social pedagogue, we see ourselves as participating and working in the same sort of professionalism and with the same aim, which is to support people in participating in different arenas in the Danish society. We are from Denmark, and there we see how, yes, I'm a trained social pedagogue and you're a trained social worker, and that's different professions. So we have different theoretical backgrounds and theories that we work with and according to, and we sort of present in education, but we are sort of, our focus is the same, that we focus on the area of help, which is aiming to support participation for people in the Danish society and in other societies as well.
Yeah, we share the same set of values, even though we've got different professional backgrounds. And in that way, we're a perfect example that different professionals can work together on the same set of values, even though we have different theoretical approaches and knowledge. So in that sense.
And in that sense, actually, just one sentence.
Yes.
That, yes, we do see social pedagogy and social work as two different things. Just to...
Yeah, we do. Today, the headline is social pedagogy. Thank you very much. It's a bit difficult for me. You have to kind of forgive me on that one. But in terms of how we speak about social work and social pedagogy, we talk about values and help and how we understand it. But in that sense, we're kind of on the same page, even though we got different backgrounds. And we are mainly it's the micro-sociological level that we are interested in. Yes. And just as Lotte, I worked years before I entered the kind of university college as a social worker. So that's another interesting thing with our, especially research perspective, is that how do we kind of go back and forth between having the professional social worker, social pedagogical view on things, and how do we have the research view on things? So, but we're not going to address that today. But it kind of taps into, it's kind of linked to the keynote today, because we're going to talk about language as well. And it is about language, and it's about the language of the social pedagogical practice, and it's about the language of the everyday life. And it's an important point in this keynote that both languages contribute to the complexity of the social pedagogical practice, because it is a very complex field or arena or situation in terms of what level we are kind of discussing the social pedagogical practice. And then we kind of add on the gut feeling, because the gut feeling is often the way that well, both the social pedagogues but also other professionals describe what is actually going on in the everyday life practice.
And what informs their decisions, that it's a gut feeling.
Exactly, and for other professionals, it's often considered as non-professional considerations or arguments. So you kind of write it off, and we will argue that the everyday life language and the gut feeling is social pedagogical practice, and it's actually where most of the social pedagogical practice kind of come to life. Even though we kind of talk about it in a non-theoretical way. It is complex analysis that kind of stands on the different theoretical fundamental perspectives. But it's especially in collaborations with other professionals that it is important that we can kind of, well, you used the word juggle before, but it's also kind of a transformation of the social pedagogical practice that happens in the everyday life and kind of comes to life in the everyday life language, that we can kind of juggle or transform it or address it in a way that other professionals actually acknowledges it. That's a difficult word.
Acknowledges.
Thank you very much. As a professional perspective. And that it is a theoretical approach, even though we talk about it in an everyday life language perspective. And another important point of view in that is that other professionals are kind of an outside perspective, but there's also the inside, or how to put it, perspective. But in the social pedagogical practice, what happens between me as the social pedagogy and the young person. This is where we have to use the everyday life language, because otherwise you don't have a clue what's going on. And this also comes to all the relevant considerations about participation and what else is on. But you would kind of give a case example to illustrate how we kind of see these different languages in
as part of the same social pedagogical language. Actually. So the key element to take away from this presentation is going to be that and sometimes we look here because we can see ourselves here, but we'll of course look at you. The key element is that the social pedagogical language is both characterized as what from an outside perspective could be seen as an everyday life language that everybody can understand. But the everyday life language is based on and informed by quite complex analysis of the situation. And again, that's informed by different theories, or at least we as researchers can see different theories in place, so to speak, in practice. But yes, I'll come with an example.
Thank you.
In this, it's from the PhD that I wrote some years ago. And imagine this situation where I'm placed in a room with a social pedagogue and we are looking at a screen. And on the screen, we see a training session in the social pedagogical organization where the social pedagogue next to me works. And it's a training session in a program that's called aggression replacement training. It's a evidence-based, manual-based program that's quite structured. And it's the training session that we watch on the screen takes place. It's a group of young people. There's 7 of them. And then we've got the pedagogue that is in the room with me watching the screen, but we see him on the screen together with a colleague. And then the 7 young people sitting in like a half circle around them. And they're addressing a theme in the program on the screen. And there's a dialogue going on between Jeppe, the social pedagogue that's in focus here, and then 6 of the young people. And they're sort of talking about this element in the program. And then suddenly on the screen, when Jeppe asks a question, we see how mess just really, he shows just a tiny bit of his pinky.
And Mads is participant number 7.
He's the participant number 7. Yeah. And he's sort of out here from Jeppe is watching the 7 or the 6 other young people. And then Mads is here and he just raises his pinky to sort of, well, what happens is that Jeppe is in dialogue with the young people and he just turns very abruptly and says, "Yes, Mads." And, you know, all the other young people are sort of, okay, they're really awake now. And Mads is responding to Jeppe's question. And back in the room where I watch this on the screen, I turn off the video clip, and I say to Jeppe, "So Jeppe, how come, what happens here? Why do you sort of shift your focus away from you're engaged in a dialogue, and then you just out of the rim of it, you know, you catch a glimpse of Mads giving a tiny signal. What happens there?" And Jeppe says, "Well, it's just gut feeling. I just know I have to catch him there." And I say, "So gut feeling, what is gut feeling?" And he says, "Well, I know that Mads is there on a non-voluntary basis. He hates being there, and he's dragged in there by his parents every time. He hasn't sort of tried to engage in any dialogue with us throughout the program, throughout the many times that they've met before. I assess the rest of the group or the atmosphere in the rest of the group as if they can handle my sort of very funny behavior in the situation. And I really want Mads to feel that he can participate in the dialogue that's there." And this is sort of the example, because as you might hear, how Jeppe describes the situation, he uses everyday language, and he says, you know, it's a gut feeling. But when I then ask him, so what is a gut feeling? He sort of elaborates on a quite complex analysis, and here you've just got a few of the elements that he offers. But it's an analysis of both Mads as an individual there, and an analysis of the rest of the group, and how they will handle that he acts in a bit of a weird way.
And also Mads's position within the rest of the group. Yeah. How would they like to kind of empower Mads's position so it can shift to another position? And another important thing or element is that it's not only how he talks about it, but this complex analysis that he makes is not only of how they talk, it's about how they look. It's about looking back, what mess is not here, this is the normal dialogue, what about the future, how can we, which kind of different thoughts do I have about the future? And in that way, it's not only about gut feeling, it's actually a cover-up for actually a high level of complexity that kind of contains both what we say and what we do not say, how we act and how we do not act, and what Jeppe senses as well. And it's also linked to his previous experiences with the group and the room, and in other maybe parallel pedagogical practices where something alike has happened. So in that sense, it's very complex. And when you talk about it as gut feeling, and that's also what other professionals call it, and we've kind of accepted that it's the way we talk about it. Another expression in a Danish context is silent knowledge.
Yeah, tacit knowledge. Yeah, call it. Yeah.
And that's just a way of kind of writing off the professional analysis or theoretical perspectives in what is going on in these very complex situations. And when we talk about gut feeling, and when Jeppe talks about gut feeling, he kind of it's unintended, and it's also unintended, I think, by other professionals, but it kind of makes the professional analysis invisible.
Yeah.
So we kind of don't know what's going on, and it's unclear on what ground Jeppe actually argues
and
what
decides.
exactly. Yeah. So by using the word gut feeling, we kind of try to reduce the complexity, but we actually kind of unintended write off the professional perspective.
Yeah, and we simplify the very sort of complex analysis, complex professional analysis, because this is not my mother, who is not a pedagogue or a trained pedagogue or anything. She wouldn't necessarily have sort of understood the situation, or I would argue she wouldn't. She's a very nice person, but she wouldn't have understood the sort of the group dynamics in, you know, in that way, because there's a constant ongoing reflection on, so how do we support participation in the next sort of arena or community or whatever. And the risk, if Jeppe goes to a network meeting where Mads participates and his social worker and Mads' parents and so on, and if Jeppe then explains, so how are things progressing with Mads, and if Jeppe then explains what's happening with his gut feeling, he simplifies the social pedagogical language. And that's where we simply need to be able to especially in dialogue with other professionals, to explain how they work with participation, they work with inclusion. We talk a lot about inclusion theory in Denmark also when we work with young people and so on. And it's about recognition, if you know Axel Honneth from Germany. And we need to be able to explain what we do with a language that by other professionals is recognized as a professional language. That's sort of that's what we try to show with this.
Yeah, and in that sense, it's quite important that the social pedagogue, just as Jeppe, actually also would talk about gut feeling as a theoretical linked analysis of a complex situation. So in that sense, he would be acknowledged as a professional that is doing a focused kind of work with Mads, even though he, from an outside perspective, talks about it in an everyday life language. Yeah. So we need, and this is also part of our agenda today, we need to create that platform. Yeah. So, because if we don't, we have to use the everyday language as well in collaboration with other professionals, because this is Mads' life we're talking about. Yeah. And if we step into another room, another setting with other professionals, and we start to talk a completely different language, Mads would be...
Yeah, because Mads is still there.
What's going on?
Yeah, and he would be completely confused about, so where's Jeppe now? And is Jeppe a different person? So,
and I thought we were progressing in the art program, and now you're using words that I've never heard.
Participation.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
So, okay, so our time is about, it's more or less up, but the key element here is the social pedagogical language that's supposed to sort of grasp and bring practice to life and so on, in our understanding, needs to consist of both the everyday life language, because that's how we work and engage with the people that it's all about, and it has to contain of a more theoretical informed language, which is also what we, for instance, meet on a conference like this, because we need to make sure that our surroundings understand it as a professionalism and not just like my mother's gut feeling.
And it's also because that if social pedagogical practice is going to help as its aims or intention, then it needs to kind of be grounded in the everyday life. And that's why we have to make it meaningful in an everyday life setting, and in this example in Mads' life, and that's why we have to talk about it in an everyday life language.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
That's about it.
Yeah, but if you'd like to engage in dialogue with us about this, then
please do.
Yeah, please do. Then I'm sure you can find our sort of contact information somewhere nearby the presentation. Is that it?
That's it. Thank you.
Bye.